Welcome to the Art of Authority podcast, bringing you interviews and episodes to help you radically optimize your authority and influence to become the go-to expert in your field. Here's your host, authority positioning coach, Mike Saunders.
Hey guys, welcome back. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Stacey Hanke, who is the author of Influence Redefined. Welcome to the program, Stacey.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, so I like to do those things like when you hear this word, what do you think of, right? So when I hear Influence Redefined, that presupposes that influence is defined. So what is your book redefining about influence?
Take one step back. We decided to redefine influence because there's many misperceptions about it, and I'm sure you and our listeners can relate. A lot of people believe that influence is you turn it on, you turn it off when you need it the most, right? Instead, throughout the book, we kick off the book with, here's what it really is. It's that body language and the messaging is consistent Monday to Monday. Second part to that is that you have this ability to move people to action long after the interaction has occurred. And that's the definition. And if the definition's not there, and I knew this to be true because anytime my team and I would go in companies and the client would say, we want you to teach influence. We want you to teach executive presence. I would always ask, well, as a culture, what does your company, how do they define influence?
Yeah.
On pause on the phone mic. And then sometimes they would respond with, can we call you back? Can you get back to you? I'm like, well, you can't, if you don't know what a definition is or what it looks like, you'll never achieve it.
You can't move toward it. And in fact, wouldn't you agree that when you are leading with influence, communicating with influence, it's a pull as opposed to a push. So it's not a psychological technique that when you say this and do that, then people will fall at your feet. It is more of a, come on, follow me. You want to follow me because, and then people feel compelled and drawn toward your programs or your calls, things like that.
Yeah. And Mike, there's so many elements, right? And that's what we in the book. Like what I just gave you a very broad definition. And then in the book, we talk about that. But playing off of what you just said, how are people drawn to you? I think one big piece of that, this ties to the definition of influence, is the consistency. People have to consistently perceive you as, whether it's credible, confident, trustworthy. Those are all adjectives that build to the big picture of influence. And that's the hardest part. It's not something that you turn on and off like a faucet. And I see many individuals do this. I don't see them as leaders in that case, versus someone who, no matter when you interact with them, day of the week, whatever medium you're using to have that conversation, you never have to guess who you're going to be interacting with that day.
And what would that look like if it was not being done the right way? And what I mean by that is when you were describing that, it made me think of consistency. If I'm an entrepreneur and I have this price point for this package that's really, really high, and people then view you as that elite kind of provider, and then you now come out with this $1 special offer. I'm being facetious, but that would not be congruent to your brand because people are like, well, who are you? I thought you're like the $10 billion, package. And now what's this $1 thing? So would your definition of consistency play in that playground as well as your messaging, your message to market, your interpersonal, things like that?
It's a combination of two. So the second half to what you just had made a comment on, the consistency of the body language and the messaging, they are congruent. We all know people that say one thing, but their body language completely says something different. Now, just take that one more level. In addition to that, exactly what you're saying, that you've got consistency in how you show up, how you behave. I'll give you an example. This was probably last fall, a couple months ago. I'm at a conference. We're ready to kick it off. It's a big sales conference for a full week. It was a big deal for this company. I'm sitting at the front table with the CEO on my left and the CFO on my right. The CEO goes to the front of the stage, and he's talking about how critical it is that we pulled you out of the field as sales professionals for a week. Here's why we're doing it. And the entire time he's trying to motivate the group for the week, the CFO off to my right is on her phone the entire time.
Oh, no.
Now it gets better because I'm thinking everyone sees us. Everyone sees what she's doing. And as a leader, you've got to be consistent. Well, he comes down off the stage. The CFO goes back up on the stage to do her intro. And no kidding, in her intro, she again is talking about how we've invested in you for the full week. We've pulled you out of the field. Therefore, for the week, shut off your phones. I'm like,
oh, no.
Where does that come into play? And
because you just modeled something totally different.
So that's the other piece of it. Or I've been in situations where I'm observing a meeting where a leader is giving update, for example, with his team. And then either before the meeting or after the meeting, the leader says something completely opposite to me than what he or she just told their team. People are going to catch on to that. Eventually that's going to come through. And once you start to jeopardize the consistency, people start doubting. They start doubting who you are. And if they start doubting who you are, they're really going to doubt, why would I follow you?
Yes. And, I would suspect, and if we kind of dig in a little deeper and go to another layer, we can be talking about a large, Fortune 500 company sales team. We can be talking about an entrepreneur and their 10 employees. Because if that messaging is not, well, like you said, consistent, it affects what you described. But then there's another aspect where it affects the downline employees. And then it affects how they interact with the prospects, their customers. And then that comes out. That message to market comes out just even subconsciously, right? You're not gonna say anything negative, but it's just gonna come off because there's disjunctness in the organization. And probably if you were to nail those leaders down, they would say, "Oh, I had no intention of doing. Of course not." Well,
we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And that's part of there's an influence model, Mike, in the book. And one of the elements inside the model, the first step to reaching Influence Monday to Monday is self-awareness. I am shocked by the amount of individuals that we work with, whether individuals or groups, once they see themselves for the first time on a video or they hear themselves on an audio playback, the amount of individuals that will say, and we're talking leaders, Mike, we're not talking
newbies
here. No.
Yeah.
How many of them will say to me, I never get feedback. People are always telling me how good I am. I've never seen myself on a playback. How can I be executing my communication? But in reality, this is how someone experiences me.
Well, isn't that the element of who have you been asking in the past? Because if they're all yes men or they're all your friends that'll just, agree with anything that you come up with, you're asking the wrong people. And while those opinions might be valid, you've got to go to a different list of people or a different group of people to get feedback.
I think you need how to ask for it too. And I'm going to get back to that in a moment. There was, and I can't take credit for this, I came across where there was some writing around, the higher up you get, the lonelier it gets. Now, that's not the exact words, but you might be familiar with that saying. And anytime I bring that up with leadership, they'll say you'll reach a certain point on the hierarchical structure and people stop telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Now, what you just said, I talk a lot about prepared feedback. Let's say, for example, before this call, you and I took 5 minutes before the call and I said to you, Mike, I really need feedback on this, whatever it is. I want to make sure I come across this way. During our interview, would you pay attention to that? And then when we're done with the interview, would you just take 5 minutes to give me feedback?
And that'd be totally easy.
That's it.
Because you said that up front, yeah.
And I think what a lot of people do, Mike, where the good, nice job, pat on the back comes into play. After the interview, I say to you, well, you have no idea. What do you want me to, what do I want you to say? What were you supposed to look at? And it's just easy to go on to your way throughout the day to say, it was good. So a lot of feedback is flawed.
And I think that guidance is really important. And so it made me think of this question. When we're thinking about entrepreneurs, business owners, it doesn't matter, salespeople, interactions. When they are dealing with anybody, because everyone is in sales per se. You don't need to be a professional salesperson to be in sales. If, I've got to sell my wishes on what I want to do this weekend to my family, right? And like, oh, we want to go to this restaurant. So there's always the sales aspect. But when we're doing interpersonal or as an entrepreneur or even, like a solopreneur coach, consultant, that message that I'm trying to deliver needs to be delivered from a position of authority and expertise, but without that heavy hammer. So there should be some things that we're actually verbally saying, like what you just said, to set the expectation. Hey, you know what? We're getting ready. I'm going to show you what I can do for your company. And if it's a fit, that's wonderful. If it's not, I want you to let me know. And I want you to listen for some things that I'm going to say in this presentation, because I'm sure you've talked to other people about this service or this product. And I want you to think about, were they coming from a position of educating you and being an advocate for you and just helping you understand your options? Were they, did they have any kind of expertise, any special expertise in the area? And I think that, to me, that's a big aha moment, because now they're listening with intensity going, yeah, doggone, that other company that was in here last week, they were just blah, blah, blah about how, and they weren't really explaining my options. And yeah, they didn't really have any expertise. They were just trying to get the order. So where do you see that pre-framing and being able to set the stage for influence in like an interpersonal, a relationship, in even a pitch?
So I hear two sides there, interpersonal and through the pitch. So let's take the pitch first. In the book, I do have a tool that I recommend individuals use. So without getting too deep in the weeds, it's a really quick tool to just figure out before you have the meeting everything you can possibly identify of why is this topic important for the listener? Why would they pay attention? Why would they want to listen to me? And we have to focus on the why. A lot of times what we do in a pitch, Mike, it's I. And I bet there's not a single person on this call right now or watching the video playback, the interview playback, that is not guilty of saying too much. And I hear story after story from leaders who say, in the first minute, I knew I had them. And then 5 minutes went by and I knew I said too much. Our subconscious in those moments lies to us and says, just keep talking, torture them even more, and eventually you'll figure it out. We all admire leaders who communicate with brevity, who say less with more. We know this. This is all common sense.
But then we don't do it.
We don't do it.
Weird. It's really weird, isn't it? It's some disconnect.
It is such a disconnect. It's really thinking through, if you could even start the conversation, if I was pitching to you, I'd start the conversation with a very open-ended question, and I would just stay quiet. A lot of my sales pitches that happen, whether it's in person or over the phone, I do very little talking. And I really position my questions very open-ended to just pull out, what does this listener need? Because I'll miss the mark. I can't just give them what we give because it's not going to work. There's been times, Mike, the client will sell themselves into our products and services without me even ever selling.
But those questions, even though they're open-ended, need to be strategically placed and phrased, right? To lead them along to have that realization of, well, yeah, I guess I don't have a process for whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of it's, here's some trivia for you because I only found this out the other day. Do you know that March is listening month?
Wow, no, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, I can't take credit for that. I just found that out, but we just did this PR pitch around it to the media this week around it. It goes back to your comment about the questioning. If we're constantly talking and we constantly feel like we have to deliver, no way you can ever adapt your message on the fly and figure out what do you need versus what the other client needs, which this other person needs. You're right. It goes into your family and friends. I would imagine you pitch the people that are close to you in life a little different than maybe you do a client or a friend. Yeah.
Where do you find the aspect, and I think that this stems, the first time I became aware of it was Chet Holmes' book, The Ultimate Sales Machine, is being that educator and an advocate, right? And not just sell, but tell and explain and show options. And, you're not going to close on the first one many times, but stay in touch and follow up. And hey, here's another piece of research. I would venture to say that, like you just mentioned, when you can be quiet and you can, control the conversation by asking great questions, they perceive you consciously or subconsciously as that expert or that leader, and they respect you. But the same thing I would pitch or say to you is they would view you as that influencer or authority or expert just in the way that you're approaching the interaction. You're not trying to push them to close a deal. You're educating them. You're asking good questions, and then you're telling them some things that they might not have thought of. Where does that play into the process, and where does that realization come? Because influence redefined, that I would suspect is a great way to expound on your influence.
Yeah. Well, I think part of influence redefined is authenticity.
Yeah.
It's really to be seen as real, genuine. Now, I think, too, the word authenticity has just gotten
overused.
Right. And again, do people really know what that means? The key is, and my approach to our client, I really think the success of our business is when I'm on a pitch, whether it's the second time, the fifth time with the same client, I really do want them to see as I'm a resource. Because if it ends up, Mike, that we're not the right deal, they still see me as I guided them to make sure they found the right vendor. I guided them to find that they really did not need communication skills training. They needed team building or whatever it is. I find that when I can let go of, sure, it's always behind my mind. I got to run a business. I've got to sell.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I also know if I can just let go of my vulnerability, be as open as I possibly can to just focus on what do they need and let go of the dollar. And suddenly the sales starts to happen. I know that sounds like, oh my God, all stars are in a line here.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to I'm able to adapt my message on the fly. I'm really able to use their terminology, understand their culture, and then truly still decide we might not be the right fit. But I'll tell you what, I had this happen yesterday. Someone that wasn't a right fit a year ago just called back yesterday and wants to bring us back in May. And he made a comment or the
Can you think of an estimate of between that time, how many communication, were they on your email list? Was there any keep in touch in time?
And we always let them opt out too. That's
Sure.
something I'm really clear with people. I'm like, I am happy. One of my comments to everyone, Mike, is even if this doesn't work out, I just want to be a resource to you. That's it. I probably have a resource for you. So this CEO, has been on our bi-weekly blog.
Okay.
He's made a comment the other day that he's been following LinkedIn, and we do a lot of video on LinkedIn. He said, I've just been following your message and I'm seeing how it's evolved, and it seems to be now a fit for us.
So that's yet another thing that you can, let's put it this way. That person's perception of your influence and expertise is at a 10 because they're coming back. But what if the deal didn't go down back then and you just took them off everything and they never heard from you? They would have perceived you as one and done, wanting the business, and you don't care for me.
There's two advantages to keeping in contact. And even if it be someone that never brings us in, it's the referral. You don't know what they know, right? And it comes down to two things. He has seen our consistent brand for a year. So to me, that's part of influence, that idea of consistency. We've talked about that. The other piece is last year, that conversation, it didn't make the sale. But remember, my definition of influence is having influence long after the interaction has occurred.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting point, and it's kind of like we scripted this, but we didn't. That exact point ties into something that I teach in my business is an authority positioning asset. Meaning, I often ask this question to a group: how long does a Facebook campaign work for you? Well, it works as long as you feed it with more money and keep paying for the ads, right? But as soon as you stop paying, the ads go away. Well, how long does an authority positioning asset work for you? So to your point, long after the initial interaction. So if you were seen in the media, wrote a book, were in a podcast, whatever the case is, whatever asset we're talking about, that is a long-term initiative that you can have out there on blogs and social media, and Google can index and pick it up. And to your point, about a year later, someone might stumble onto that digital footprint a year later and go, ooh, you know what? That was a good point that they made in that video that they posted on YouTube or that podcast that they were on. That now resonates with me. And then now they come in, but you don't know when they're ready. And you've got to have those things out there that net cast really wide.
Yeah, it's the consistency, though, that is critical. I keep telling our clients, someone is always watching you. You are always on camera. People are seeing you. And I have an example of that where this is that lack of consistency. A leader that I had recently gone out to lunch with, watching him not be happy with the wait staff. And it just totally changed my perception of him, because I always saw him as, wow, he's so calm and just really treats everyone well, because I see him how he treats his team back at the office. Well, outside of the office, it's a different person.
Monday to Monday.
It's Monday to Monday. Yeah.
That's huge. So let's think about now. Let's say that someone is watching this going, okay, I got it. I'm wanting to develop my authority and expertise and influence because I know they're important. What if it's a organization, and it doesn't matter whether it's entrepreneurial or, a person with a 10 salesperson team? Where do you start? In other words, where do you start without coming off as put on or manufactured? Because that's an important piece.
I think you have to take a look. So first, and this is one of the models in the books, I want you to just kind of imagine a triangle here. So first get the feedback, but it has to be truly feedback. It needs to be constructive feedback. Go to the people you trust, people in your personal life, your professional life. People in your personal life will always tell you the truth. And ask them, what is one thing how do I come across? It's going to change perhaps how you perceive yourself. What could I change to have more credibility, to have more trust, whatever it is that you're trying to go after? So you got feedback, and then you have to start to practice. And part of practice is, I highly recommend, especially entrepreneurs, leaders. I mean, this really does apply to everyone. Start observing yourself through the eyes and ears of your listeners. And the only way you can do that, you're going to have to start recording. That's video recording, that's audio recording. And once those two, so that's happening, that's constant. And the base of the triangle is you cannot do this alone. You need accountability partners. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to hire a coach. It can be anyone in your personal life, your professional life. You sit down with them and you say, here's what I want to do for the next 30 days. Here's how often I want you to hold me accountable. Here's what I want to achieve, those 3 steps. But without the video, without the audio, I don't know how you can begin to increase your awareness of how much influence you really have.
Because you might be going this way and you need to be going that way.
And this way, Mike, is you're going off of feeling.
Yep.
This is fact, and we don't believe the fact until we see.
What do you think about trying to accomplish what you just said and having that also be used as a, like multi-purpose content? Meaning this, let's say that you're thinking, okay, well, I know to develop some influence and authority, I want to get out there and do Facebook Lives and podcast or whatever. And so I also want to ask some core people these questions about how I come across. So I'm going to record these things as pieces of content. I'm going to pick the 5 most urgent, important questions that we get as an organization, and I'm going to teach on each one individually as an audio, as a video, and let's just say even as a video. I'm going to do a Facebook Live, and then so that becomes Facebook Live video teaching, and then I'm going to take the audio out, and that becomes a podcast or an audio on my blog. So while your core people are analyzing that after the fact, it also is kind of like a bar where you can say, here's where I'm starting, or here's where I am. And then the next time from that feedback, you can go, okay, hey, in this next point, we're going to talk about, and now you're integrating some of the feedback you got. And so each one is leveling up and getting better and better.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're accomplishing several things there. But the most important is the awareness. Start with awareness. Just see where you're at versus what your feeling is telling you, or maybe the false feedback that you're getting, and get the fact.
Now, what do you do about clients who they come back and they kind of feel a little defensive about the feedback, because that's going to happen, right?
Oh, it has happened, Mike. Yes, it has. And I've got to look at the amount of people that we mentor or that we have group workshops with. They're usually volunteering. So that's definitely in our favor. We don't do any open enrollment because I don't want the people there that's not ready to handle it.
Yes.
They're still the one, even though they volunteered. I think what happens is when they see it on the playback, they go into either defensive mode or they start making excuses.
Well, what I meant there was...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or if I knew what to say, if I got a chance to prepare, and my piece on that is you never get to prepare everything you want to.
Right.
For someone who has the excuses, I really sit back to figure out and ask them the right questions of, where's that coming from? There's something else going on there. And once we can unveil that through our questioning and get them to be open, they'll start opening up. The other approach that I take with them is there's not a right or wrong. Just keep watching the playbacks and you'll figure it out.
Yep.
I'm here to guide you.
Because you can't be Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, Stacey Hanke. I mean, you can't be clones of those. So you're you, but take little elements and take that feedback. So I love in these sessions, I want to have writer-downers or pieces of practical, tactical things, which number one is, boom, awareness. Get someone or a group of someone's to analyze what you're doing. Go out there and look at yourself. Google me. Go to my social media. Go to my website. Google my name, my business. What would you perceive of me if you were a prospect? And then the other thing is some of your teachings, get some of that feedback. So awareness is huge. What then would be the next step once you've got that pat down? What should they be doing next to build off of that in developing their influence and authority?
So once they have the feedback, they've gotten some awareness because they've been doing this video and audio playback, then literally sit down, find that accountability partner and figure out, what do I want to change or enhance in the next 30 days? And literally, if you saw my computer monitor at my desk, it's filled with Post-it notes right now. Post-it notes are all this feedback that I get from my accountability partners, and it's my plan that I write out for 30 days. And when it's in front of me, that way when I'm on the phone, I'm thinking about a skill or a technique that I'm trying to enhance. So think about that model again. Think about feedback, practice, and accountability, and can you see how that's constant? And it's every conversation. So I'm going to challenge our listeners for the rest of the day or whenever they're listening to this is every conversation they have moving forward in the next 24 hours, pay attention to one thing. Pay attention to, what does your voice sound like? Are you looking people dead in the eye? Do you have brevity? Do you have clarity? And if you just focused on one thing about your behavior or your messaging in each conversation in a day, that's what leads us to our next takeaway, which is the consistency.
Another thing you can focus on is not talking over someone, giving them a chance to speak in the conversation and not listening for the next thing you're going to say and waiting for them to stop just so you can say that, right? Because I think that's a lot of people that are entrepreneurial, creative, they tend to do that. We all tend to do that. And like you mentioned about, they had the sale made, but then they talked themselves out of it because they just kept going on and on. So finding some of those things, and I would even add on to that piece, is taking that one element to focus on and focusing on that over the next 5 to 10 conversations or interactions, and then move on to the next one from there, because you don't want to just focus on it one time and go, cool, got that. Because you're not going to get it embedded. The old saying, 21 times before it becomes a habit. You might need to focus on it for, quite a few times so that now it becomes second nature and you're not thinking, I must wait until, or I must not do.
Yeah. Are you into March Madness, Mike?
I had someone the other day ask me, hey, do you want me to add you to a bracket? And I was like, I have watched probably 6 minutes of college basketball my entire life. So the answer is no, but you can continue with your example because I do know what March Madness is.
Because I think about, and it's now because we're in March, right? So I think about basketball. Think about how many times those teams practice.
Yeah.
Do not get to the game, the big playoff, and then they just practice.
Yep.
That goes back to what you're saying. It's practicing every skill every day, but practicing it one at a time. This is what we're taught today, you and I. This is a lifelong learning. This is not something that, like you said, all right, I'm starting to pause. I'm done. No, you'll get rid of your ums and ahs if you focus on it, and then you will use another word to fill.
Yeah.
That's the part I don't think people understand it. A lot of times I'll hear from some of our clients, new clients, they'll say, I don't know if our leaders are going to want to go through this program because they work really hard, so they've gotten here for a reason. And I'm thinking, well, that's why they need coaching. Because it's so visible. So it's the constant work. What this interview is designed, hopefully, to do today is to get people to start thinking, I never really did think about how I come across. I wonder if I walk in that room like I belong there.
Yeah.
That's what
and think about too what your business does, what you're trying to provide to your target audience. And if it's not selling pencils, you can sell that wearing a t-shirt and blue jeans. But typically we're talking about people that are selling their expert services or products. Well, what does your entire brand come off as? And the brand is not your logo. And we know that it sounds cliche to say, but your brand is everything from what they see before they come and meet with you, from your initial conversations, from your website, your online presence, all of that. Mm-hmm. And what does that say? Because guess what? It speaks volumes. And sometimes you're not going to get that call, quote unquote, because of what they saw before they got to you. They saw something out there that just didn't resonate or wasn't congruent. And I think that sometimes this awareness on, the interpersonal, on the, way we speak, with the way we treat people, but also what about all across our channels? You think about integrated marketing communications, and you think about what does my brand look like on social media, on my website? What does it look like on all the social media channels? And that messaging, you can't have your tagline be different variations across all of these, and salesperson one say it one way and the CEO says it another way. So what do you recommend then with, okay, now let's think about the brand messaging to get that congruent?
I think leaders have to get in front of these teams, and they have to be meeting frequently. I mean, look at what we can do today. We're not in the same city.
Yep.
Get on Zoom. Start getting on Zoom. I'm not talking a phone call. I don't think a phone call works anymore. I think use your Zoom, use Skype, whatever it is, and whether it's weekly, monthly, you're making sure you have to do the work to make sure it's done. And I'm preaching based on what we do as well. We do monthly team calls because my team's located all over the place. And we get on and we talk Zoom, and we're constantly talking about is our message consistent? Because now there's positives and negatives. We have such an amazing ability to influence now because of all the social media techniques that we've got.
Yep.
On the other side, people are seeing you before they ever meet you. So if you mess that up, you're going to have to really work hard to rebuild. But let's get in front of our teams again and have face-to-face. I consider this to be face-to-face.
Yeah.
Face-to-face conversations. You can't be out there guessing and hoping that my email reaches everyone. You can tell I'm passionate about this.
Well, you brought up that piece, which is hugely important, but it ties right back into that example they gave about the COO. You need to be consistent, but you need to be the one displaying and modeling that.
Exactly.
You can't just say to the group, we need to be saying this, doing this, not doing this, and then you're off doing something different. Do as I say, not as I do. And I think that ties into then that leadership. And probably if someone were to say, rate this person on a scale of 1 to 10 on their leadership ability, and if they come in low, and then maybe you ask that person, well, why did they? Well, you know what? I don't know. That was my first reaction, but I guess I noticed that. And then I think some of these chinks in the armor will start coming out where it's like, well, they don't do this and they always do that. So it is that work in progress, and you're never going to tick the box and go, yay, we're there. Now what should we work on or conquer?
And that's just, I love sports, so I use that analogy a lot. And it's just any athlete, they put in the work. Any successful leader, they put in the work. And that's the part I don't think people realize. I hear a lot of people in our workshops say, well, you were born with these skills. I wish I was that easy. No, you've got to do the work. Anything that has a big price tag on it, meaning a very positive, effective reputation, requires work.
Yep. And it never, and guess what else? You appreciate it that much better, and it sticks that much longer. If you needed to gain 20 pounds or lose 20 pounds or whatever, and boom, you got it done in a week, you didn't appreciate it. You didn't work for it. You didn't earn it, and it's going to come off or come back on, that much quicker. So all of a sudden, we got to get back down to that, roll up your sleeves. Now we've got a plan. We've done the assessment. We've done the hard work of kind of like ready, fire, aim. We've gotten ready. We aimed. And now we're ready to fire, which is the work part. So many times that is that circle of, okay, now I've worked, but now you got to come back and see in a certain period of time, let's say quarterly, is that work paying off and keeping us in the right direction?
Yeah. Hey, I always tell my listeners, my audiences, that if Influence Monday to Monday was so easy, everyone would be doing it.
Yep.
Nah, it's the people that are willing to really do the work, are disciplined. We give them the tools. They just have to put it into action.
Perfect. Well, let's wrap up with this. Where can people go to get your book?
Thank you. So they can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If they want even more resources, it's Stacey with an EY, HANKEINC.com.
Excellent. Well, Stacey, thanks so much for your time today. Even though we're not in the same room, it is cool just to kind of see, it's the same difference. We're seeing each other and talking, and we came up with some great ideas that I think people can implement right away. So thanks a million. I really appreciate your help.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to the Art of Authority podcast. Are you interested in building your authority positioning as the #1 strategy to grow your business, brand, and influence? Book your authority audit today. This 7-point audit of your current authority position will uncover opportunities and show you how to be seen as a leading expert and authority your industry looks to for advice. Visit www.authoritypositioningcoach.com.